A few months ago I put a post onto Facebook. I had a couple of stacks of these tubs. They are 20 litre plant pots. Now they're made of plastic, and in that post I asked you guys what we were going to do with them, and there was only one person who got it right. So in this episode I'm going to show you exactly what we're going to do with these plant pots, and that's coming right up after this. So over the last few years I've been making swarm traps, and I've been making them out of plywood. As you can see, I've still got some brood boxes here that I'm in the middle of finishing up, and I've got a stack over there I'm in the middle of finishing up. But there's one issue with the typical 5-frame nuke made out of ply box, and that's it's very heavy, especially when it's got a few pound of bees in it as well. And as you've seen, last year I had them up in trees, up quite high and everything else. So this year I was looking for something that was much lighter. It was going to be cheap to produce. It could potentially still catch swarms, and was also very, very cheap, because if a 5-frame nuke gets stolen, that's a few quid gone down the drain. So I've gone to these plant pots. Now this is a 20 litre plant pot, and the reason that I'm using a 20 litre plant pot is because it's been established that swarms prefer a space of between 35 and 40 litres. So two of these plant pots together will actually make a 40 litre cavity. There's a couple of things that we need to do for this though. Plastic gets really hot. Now, we all know that plastics are damaging our environment and everything else, and before I was making them out of wood, and now I've gone to plastic, and yes, I'm using plastic again. But I have a few things about plastic, guys, that I think needs addressing, okay? A lot of the plastics in the oceans and that are damaging marine life and our wildlife and everything else, they tend to come from one-time use plastics, okay? That's an issue. We need to deal with that problem. But plastic as itself is still a valuable resource, something that we can still utilize for the benefit of people, but it needs to be limited in how you use that. For something that's going to be used time and time and time again, and then once you've finished using it, what you want can be recycled rather than disposed of, then there is no issue using plastics as far as I can see. So that's what we've done, okay? As you can see, this product here has a recycling logo on it, and this plastic can be fully 100% be recycled into new products, whether that be car dashboards or new bottles, whatever the case being, okay? But I plan on using these for the next few years. The secret, of course, is catching swarms in them. If I don't catch any swarms in them, they're going to end up in the recycling bin. But I'm hoping that we will catch some swarms. Anyway, let's get on to it, because I've yabbed on for quite some time. Now, the issue with plastic, when it's in the sun, it's going to get really, really hot. So we need to create some sort of vents in these. And the first job that we need to do is obviously tape up all of the holes. So as you can see here, I'm just taping up the holes in the bottom, just using some duct tape, and that can be pretty much anything. I have got some that I produced, my first earlier ones with these, and I used expanding foam, but I found that duct tape works just as well, and shouldn't affect the bees, especially if you put a piece on the inside as well to cover it so that it's not tacky on the inside. But for the most part, I leave these long enough that that tack sort of wears off anyway, so it's not an issue. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to create a vent in these, and to do that, all we need to do is find our handle, which is here, and we need to drill 4 holes in that in the bucket for that. And all you need for that is a little screwdriver. We also need one of these, a jigsaw. This bit might get loud, but now we need to join those 4 holes. So just stick the jigsaw in one of those holes and run it to the neck. before the health and safety people sort of jump in, yes, I should be wearing eye protection, but I prefer to see what's going on here. I take that chance, but if you're doing this, wear eye protection, guys. So we have our hole here in the bucket, as you can see. Okay, we need to do the same thing now on this one. Now, as you can see, when I taped, I left that one single hole here. This is going to be the entrance for the bees. So we need to make sure the vent is right below this hole. Okay, and that's the important bit here. Okay, so we now have our 2 holes. Next step, we now need to make some screen for those. I just have some mastic here, and all we're going to do is put a bead of mastic around there, but before we do, we need to cut some mesh. This is number 8 hardware cloth, as Americans would call it. To us, it's just a very fine mesh, or window screen mesh. It's a lightweight aluminium, and it's very good for stuff like this. Nothing can get through it, but it allows the air to come through. So all I'm going to do now is literally just measure over it, cut a piece that's big enough. It hasn't got to be too square, but I will trim it up just to make it a bit neater. There we go. Just lay a bead of silicone right around. There. I don't know if you can see that bead of silicone there, guys. It's a bit dark in here. Let me see if I can angle it so the light picks it up. But there's a little bead of silicone just around that hole there, okay? And we take this mesh and we're just going to arc it in the shape of the bucket. Now this next bit you're going to need a cloth for, which I'm going to get over here, just to wipe your hand down. If you wet your finger, a little bit of saliva and that'll stop it sticking. And you literally just place the mesh over it and push it down, smearing the silicone through the mesh, which will then hold it in place. And wipe your finger off, and then you just need to allow that to dry. We need to do the same thing, and that's what it creates there, look. So we now have a mesh ventilation hole, which will help with this. Now when we are setting these buckets, we do not put them in direct sunlight. They need to go in the shade, and typically we're going to put them up a tree or within a tree so that the sun is never directly on them anyway, and the bees prefer that. So again, same with this one. Quick bead of silicone. Bend the mesh to suit. Lay him on and push him down. And there we have it with this one as well. which is the other side. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is change our drill bit to a nice thin long drill bit. We need to line up the handles of the two pots together so that they're in line. And the next thing we need to do now is drill holes through the lip of the two pots, and this is how we're going to attach them together. So all we're doing here, 3 holes right around if you get them out of line, guys, just line them back up and then drill another hole. The one thing about plastic is it's quite forgiving. So there you have it. Our pots are nearly done. So we need to join these pots together. Now the first thing we need to do before we worry about that is we are going to support this using some old comb. Now this is an old frame out of a honey super. It was actually used out of one of the old swarm traps. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some wire. And here I've just got some thin wire. We're just going to straighten it out. And we're going to double it over, guys. Now what this will be is our fastening way to the, to fasten it to a tree. So I've left it quite long. We need to poke this roughly through the center of the frame, and we need to take it halfway. And when we get it halfway, we then need to just get it and twist it a few times in a loop so it doesn't move from there. Just like that, guys, okay? All right. We now put this in the pot. We can roll this back up into a circle just to keep it out of our way for the moment. We put that in the pot above there. There's a couple of other things that need to go in this pot, and that's namely some old comb, because this attracts bees, okay? So we're going to just chuck that in the pot as well, and I'll just drop all over the floor as we're ready. We will also bait these hives with a cotton bud or a Q-tip, whatever you want to call them, with some lemongrass oil on, and we will push that through this hole when we go to set the trap. So remember now, we need to, at the moment that's just hanging there with the wire over the top. We now need to entrap that wire by adding this one. So essentially you have two pots with a frame that's dangling right across the top of it, and we're going to use these, which are cable ties. We line up the holes, feed it through, and we're going to pull the cable tie and pull it tight, but not too tight, because we still need it just tight enough like this for the moment, because we still need a bit of movement within the bucket itself, just to make sure everything lines up later. So we'll tighten them all a little bit after. Okay, now we've got all 6 ties in, we just need to pull it tight like this. And cut these off. That, guys, is essentially our swarm trap. Now, Hanging right across the centre of here is a frame of comb, which means the queen can start laying straight away, and you could just take that comb out and set that into a hive. There's one other thing we need to do, just as an added precaution. I'm going to take some insulation tape and across the top joint and just down the top quarter, so over half of the box, I'm actually going to just seal off, just to help prevent any rain from getting in there. Not it would probably go in it anyway, but it will make life much easier for the bees. We're never going to get this perfect, but all we're doing is just trying to prevent some rain getting in there. It will drip straight out the bottom if it does anyway. It's not going to be a problem. But what it will do is just keep out the majority. Now, if we catch anything in these traps, it means that we're going to have to do what's known as a cutout, and that means literally cut it open it up like that. But most of them should be hanging around the frame itself. If it's been a while since I've been there and they've been established and they've built some other frame, other sort of comb across the whole thing, I will get a knife and slice down, quite a long knife, and slice down the join once I've cut the straps, and that will allow me to separate them. We can then remove the bees into a new home. What this does though, guys, like I said, now this can be hung from a tree. As you can see, I'm holding it with 2 fingers. It's very light, so I could even climb a tree if I needed to. We have an entrance hole here, right there, look. So, and we will bait that with a cotton bud with some lemongrass oil, or a Q-tip with lemongrass oil. We've got some vents in the bottom, which will help them to be able to control temperatures. We've got a hanging system from the top, and there's a frame right across that bottom there. So it is really, really, in my opinion, a really good little system. Whether it works is another thing, and that's what we're going to try. I already have 10 of these out, and I've put them in locations where I've known there are bees. Also, they're in a location where they're out of the sun directly, but they're looking onto open areas. Bees don't like obstacles in their way, in their flight path, if they can help it. The other thing you need to look at is things like landmarks. So if a tree in the middle of a feed is ideal because they can find that easily, or if you've got them around the edge of a field in a hedge or something like that, then find something like a landmark, like a telegraph pole or something like that, that'll help them be able to find where they're going. And it's just a case now of getting it out there, and we've got 9 more of these to make, and that means we'll have 20 of these out this year, and hopefully we'll catch a few more swarms. And the reason I like catching swarms is because buying colonies is really, really expensive. They're usually colonies that aren't doing so well, where someone has made up a colony and it hasn't been performing for them and they sell it on. So there are unscrupulous dealers out there, but by getting swarms you get a lot of different genetics, so it helps your genetic pool for your colonies as well. So guys, that's what I need to do now. I need to go and hang this one like the rest, nice and easy. I hope this was of interest on how to build a swarm trap using plant pots. I know it's been a while since we spoke about this in the Facebook groups, but it's here now, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Anyway guys, that's it for myself for this episode. If you haven't already, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Question of the day: if you keep bees, how do you make your swarm traps? Put the answers in the comments below, and I will be seeing you in the next episode. Bye bye.